pals, I'm here today to do sort of a chatty check-in video. I am not going to do a March TBR like I did for February because most of the books I'm planning on reading in March I actually spoke about in my anticipated releases video a couple of months back. So I requested like loads of anticipated releases at the library, and a lot of those books came out in March or will come out, no, came out in February or will come out in March. And so basically they're all starting to come in for me at the library. So yeah, I thought I would just have a little like catch up chat about how planning a TBR for February went. Now I have a lot less books on my physical TBR, and yeah, just chat basically. So I used to make TBRs right at the start of having this channel 10 years ago, and then I stopped making TBRs because I realised I was really bad at sticking to them. Last year I made a few seasonal TBRs which worked a bit better, but like still probably read 50% of the books on the TBR. And then last month I made a TBR and I basically put too many books on the TBR. So I read or DNF'd most of the books on that TBR, but I didn't manage to get to 4 of them simply because I just didn't have time. Basically, I put The Deluge by Stephen Markley in my TBR, which is an 880 page book, but it's massive. Like, it's a really big hardback, and the writing is quite small and very densely packed, and also it's like a very slow read. And so I hadn't quite taken on board how many hours it would take me to get through that. It took a lot of hours. So I didn't get to 4 books, but had I not had a book of that size on my TBR, I think I would have managed all the books, which felt really cool to like plan to read a group of books and actually do it. So I would be doing that for March, but like I said, it would just be a bit of a repeat. So I will briefly mention the books, but I won't go into details. So firstly, the 4 books that I had on my February TBR that I didn't manage to get to, I'm still planning on reading, so I'll just briefly highlight them here. The first one being a reread, and that is The Unseen World by Liz Moore. And this is, from memory, one of my favourite books of all time. It is a coming-of-age novel with a sort of sci-fi twist to it, and I loved it and still really want to read it. And I'm actually hoping to reread quite a lot of books this year, and books that I remember being my favourites. So if you're interested in me filming a TBR of books I'd like to reread, then do let me know. And then I have one other novel that I didn't manage to get to, and that is Devil House by John Darnell. And I actually read the first, I think, 40 pages of this and put it down. The reason I put this down is because I was trying to read a couple other books at the same time as reading The Deluge, just because it was a physically very heavy book, so I didn't always want to be holding a really heavy book. And this is one of the ones I picked up, and I just realised that it was really not a good call to read this at the same time because they had, bizarrely, some similarities. The similarities being they both, to me, feel like very American novels, and I didn't want to sort of lessen the impact of that by reading 2 at the same time. And the other thing is that The Deluge has like 14 different characters, and so you have lots of different narratives pulling together. This only has, I think, 3 or 4 different narratives, but sort of still has that similar feel. And so I decided to like pause this one and pick it up when I've had a bit more space from The Deluge, hopefully in a week or so, because I really did like those initial 40 pages. Actually reminded me sort of thematically of a TV show, True Detective. So yeah, we'll get back to that one. Another one I picked up, I read like 15 pages of the introduction, is The Great Imperial Hangover, How Empires Have Shaped the World. Again, just didn't really have the brain space for this because The Deluge took a lot of my brain, a lot of sort of science and politics and like economics within the novel. But yeah, I'm going to read this month. There are 8 chapters on 8 different countries, and I'm planning to read like a chapter a day so I can really take on board all the information. And I am someone reading, when I read nonfiction, who likes to like pause and Google anything I don't know about, which is a lot. So that's that. And then the other one is Run Towards the Danger by Sarah Polley. Confrontations with a Body of Memory. This is a collection of personal essays that I heard Jill over at the Book Bully recommend. I've really high hopes for this one. I read a few memoirs in February and just basically didn't want to read 2 memoirs at the same time, and there was never a point when I wasn't reading another memoir. But I have just watched Woman Talking, which Sarah Polley adapted and directed for the screen, and I thought it was brilliant, and so I'm even more excited to get to this one. So there are those. And then, so as you may know if you've been watching my channel, I went from having a few hundred unread books to, I wanted to get to, initially I wanted to get to 60. 60 felt like a good amount of choice. And I think what a lot of people the reason a lot of people have a lot of unread books is this feeling of sort of shopping your shelves and never being limited in choice, which is how I felt initially, and hence why my TBR got so big. And then I was like, I want it to be 60. And then when it got to 60, it still felt like an overwhelming amount of choice to me, and it still felt there were books that were languishing and being ignored. So then I was like, okay, get it to 30. And then I got it to 30 and I still felt the same way. And now I only own 14 unread books. 3 of those I had before the start of this year, and the others I got for Christmas or bought in January. And I still am unhappy with that number, because still I borrow a lot of books from the library, and so those books I own do sort of get ignored. Maybe I'm going to read 1 or 2 a month, but I'm much more focused on my library holds. And so I think my sort of long-term plan is to just get back to how I used to be before I started this channel 10 years ago, and be someone who just buys a book when I'm about to read it. So if my library hasn't got a book, can't get hold of a book, and I'm like, I want to read that book this week, I will pick it up and read it that week. And there might be some of you hearing that who are like, oh my God, like you won't have enough choice. I get that concern. However, I live in a city centre. I have a really big local library that's like a 20-minute walk from me. My city also has a couple of bookshops. Obviously, with how things are online, I can sort of easily order a book and have it arrive within a few days. And also, I'm someone who used to reread all the time. Like when I was a kid and then a teenager, if I loved a book, I would have read it like at least 6 times. It's mad to me that I don't do that anymore. And so say we went into a lockdown again and there was no way, I couldn't use my library, I couldn't order books, I wouldn't feel panicked. I have hundreds of books here that I profess to love enough that I've kept them to reread, and yet I haven't. So for me, there's no concern over the choice, and actually, yeah, I still want to sort of tailor that choice down. So, because I put so many books on hold at the library, my March reading, other than those 4 books I just mentioned, I didn't get to last month, my March reading is pretty much going to be dictated by the fact that I have holds coming in at the library where someone else is waiting for them, and that means I can only have them for 3 weeks. So I need to read them quickly. So I have a stack here I'm very quickly going to hold up. And I collected this stack a couple of days ago, and these are all new releases. So I have Bad Cree by Jessica Johns, Brutes by Diz Tate, A Spell of Good Things by Ayobami Adebayo, Wayward by Amelia Hart, and The Shadow Casket by Chris Wooding. I think all of these, except maybe this one, luckily the biggest one, has somebody else in the queue waiting for it, so I can't renew it after 3 weeks. And so that means if I want to read all these books, I have to read them now. Now, there are a couple of debut novels there, which means I may not like the author's writing style and therefore I'll DNF them. But for example, I'm almost 100% certain I'll like the Ayobami Adebayo and the Chris Wooding because I've read their books before and really enjoyed them. So yeah, so I have those. And then I have 2 books I pre-ordered that will be coming to me this month that I'd like to read this month. And then I also have loads more books. I already have 3 more books that I just saw today, got put on the hold shelf for me. So yeah, and something I'm a bit sneaky about, I'd love to know how you do this if you borrow books from a library. If I request a book, they put it on a shelf for me and I have 3 weeks to go collect it. So sometimes if I have too many books like now, I won't go and pick it up right away because I need to use that 3-week window to sort of extend my time of having it, even though I don't physically have it. I feel a bit bad about that with new releases, so I really try not to do it because in my mind, I'm like, it's sort of being wasted. It's sitting there on a shelf and no one else is reading it. And I hear lots of people in the US say, I did this, I don't know what the terminology is, but did this thing where like I moved myself down the queue. I've never heard a British person say that. Tell me if I'm wrong and you're British and you have that option. But I can't be like, I'm still interested, but not right now. There's no option for me to do that. So if I take myself out of the queue, then I have to go right to the back. And that list could be like, a lot of the time, the sort of books I request that isn't more than 10. But there are a few books, like I've requested Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. No idea if I'm going to like it, but I'm intrigued. And that was like a list of like 50 people, I think. Although I'm sure they have a few copies of that book. So basically, those are the 9 books I'm focusing on, but there will be other books that come in this month, one of which is my Patreon read this month for our book club, and that is I Have Some Questions For You by Rebecca Mackay. And so, is it Rebecca or is it Rachel? I think it's Rebecca. And that should come in the next week. If it doesn't, I will just buy a physical copy to read it for the book club, but I'm pretty sure I'll get it in time to read it. And there are a few others that will also come in this month for me. So yeah, and we shall see. Some of these books that I'm about to read could end up being on the Women's Prize long list, so that'll be interesting to see what happens with that. So yeah, this is just a little check-in, and I just sort of wanted to sort of talk about the library a bit, because what I realised the other day, I collected these 4 books all in one day. They all arrived on the same day for me at the library. And when I got them home, I realised that I felt happier about having these 4 books from the library than I would have actually owned them. And I think, weirdly, a big part of that for me is that they're bound in like plastic, and I don't know what it is, but I sort of prefer that feel to the feel of like the actual book cover itself. There's something about it that makes it feel really special, and like, I don't know what it is. And I definitely feel a bit more like it when it's a new book, and I know I'm the first person to have it, but I still feel like it about like other books that I'm not the first person to have. And so yeah, like I feel more excited to have these books and not own them. And maybe part of that is that I know I have to read it in 3 weeks, so it sort of organises me. I don't know, but I just really love it, and I just 100% when I get to a point, God, I nearly dropped all those. 100% when I get to a point now where I just, use the library for the vast majority of my reading. So there's that. The one other thing I wanted to quickly mention is I have been doing this channel for like 10 years. I had my 10-year anniversary on, I think, the 5th of January. And I was intending to do a Q&A video, and I keep forgetting to announce it. So I am going to be doing a sort of Q&A video. So if you have any questions, book related or otherwise, I'm happy for questions about non-bookish things, then do please put them down below. And in the next couple of weeks, I will do a response video responding to your questions. So I'll probably give you like a week to ask questions. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what you ask. And we can have a little sort of more casual chat, because I think I've only done Q&A once in the 10 years of having the channel, which I realise is probably quite bad, but yeah, that's just happened somehow. So yeah, thanks so much for being a subscriber. If you've been here since the start, like absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for putting up with me for 10 years. But however long you've been here, I'm really grateful for every view and every comment. I know there's so much more content to choose between on YouTube, but also specifically on BookTube now than there was when I started. So the fact that you're still choosing to watch this video is really kind, and I'm really grateful. And I, after all these years, still really love being a part of this community, get so much out of it, and it has made my reading life so much richer. Like just such a, I can't imagine where I'd be reading wise now if it wasn't for BookTube. I've learned so much from hearing other people's reviews, and yeah, it's just been a joy. So yeah, thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing your questions. Bye.